in terms of... Okay, let's talk to Warwick before I'm going to express my thoughts about the Druid. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, this segment is going to go straight for YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube, hi, my name is Alexander Ostanasandrievich, and the topic of this video is, just like with the previous one, how good is Druid when it comes to leveling up on Nightmare difficulty. Again, I'm not going to talk about gear aspect, like if you're playing with gear or without gear. I'm going to talk about strictly like skills and his archetype as a whole. Now, in regards to Nightmare, one thing that you would have to understand, at least how I have approached it, is I have completed first 3 acts on Nightmare still using the same stuff as I was using on normal difficulty, and that is Fissure. So nothing changed when it comes to first 3 acts. It's Fissure all the way. You cast it, you run around, everybody's dying, you grab experience, loot, and you are going onwards. And it's the same stuff that I have said before. Fissure is good if Fissure is great or excellent if enemies are moving around, they start to take extra damage, but it's not so good if target stays still on one place and you it doesn't allow you to kill targets as quickly as you would want if it stays still, including bosses and regular enemies. Now, after Act 3, like after you kill Mephisto, you're going to spec into Tornado Druid. The reason why I already explained it. Tornado Druid requires a lot of skill points to get going, because you would not only have to spec into Tornado, you would also have to... You need to make sure that you are maxing out all of your synergistical spells, and for Tornado Druid that is Hurricane, that will be Twister, and that will be Cyclone Armor. So 3 spells. It's kind of similar concept to Blizzard Sorceress, you know, the same stuff, pretty much. There you have like Blizzard, Glacial Spike, and the other stuff that I forgot, but the same idea, like 3 spells have to be maxed out. Now, in terms of those spells, what can I say about like Cyclone Armor? It's great if you're fighting against magical opponents, like any magical opponents, like those Glooms, like pesky annoying Glooms, those Doom Knights, Oblivion Knights, any enemy that have like magical skill on them, you would absorb it. Actually, you would absorb... The level of absorption here is even higher in comparison to melee damage absorption on a Bone Armor. So from elemental spells you are more than protected, which means that once you get... My understanding of this, like once you get great gear, aka beast gear, you will have no problem farming tougher, quote-unquote tougher areas like Bale runs or Chaos Sanctuary with Druid, I mean. Why? Because, well, enemies there are mostly gonna do elemental type of attacks and not necessarily melee. I mean, not always melee, and you'll be protected against them. Same thing with leveling. Like, there had been one instance where you have seen me and my partner going through Act 5 with Glooms. Who cares? Like, Glooms, like I had elemental resistances, I had Cyclone Armor on, and they could not even do anything with my HP at all. So that's that. This spell, it's great. It's also great that you don't have to recast it. I mean, you cast it once and it pretty much is present all the time. It has like 100% uptime. The only difference here is the fact that visually, like, you don't understand visually when it's time to recast it unless it's totally gone. In comparison to Bone Armor, for instance, Bone Armor has those 3 spinning things around you, and when you start taking damage, one thing is gone, then the next thing is gone, and then finally all of things is gone. So you can estimate when it's time to recast it, recast your Bone Armor easily than with Cyclone Armor. But in terms of purely defensive point of view, yeah, this spell from elemental attacks, like it's a great stuff. Like it's gonna be even greater, even better on hell difficulty once you start to wear better gear and put more points towards it. What else? Tornado. Now, in terms of Tornado, yes, I know that the one, and I understand, and I agree that the one drawback is that they have the mind of their own. They are not following the pathway that you want them to follow to the enemy, like towards the enemy's direction. And sometimes they could like go in any other direction that you would want them to go, so that's a slight drawback. But you know, since I have played a class, like for me personally, I have played a class in Grim Dawn which used something similar, like with tornadoes. He summons them, they are swirling around also in random direction doing damage to the enemy, so I got used to that. I wouldn't say that every other person, every other player is going to feel the same about the spell, especially since it also has limited range. I mean, in generally speaking, like this version of a caster is pretty similar to the paladin, meaning that you would be casting your spells up close and personal. The reason why is also this spell, Hurricane, but I'm going to talk about it later. The same stuff with Tornado, like you're not going to see it like from one side of the screen and kill enemies on the other side of the screen. You have to get close, and also, while the benefit is there, like Tornado is passing through the enemies, allowing you to AoE them, and it also does, by itself, it does physical damage, which makes it a good choice if you want to play through Hell difficulty and not worry that much about immune, because immune to physical, you would not encounter them that often in comparison to other immunities on Hell. I'd say it's like, I wouldn't call like this spell like too overpowered or like too, how should I say it, like I wouldn't call the spell like excellent spell in comparison to like a Bone Spear on a Bone Necro, or I don't know, like Frozen Orb / Firewall with Sorceress. It's good for what it is, but it's not like super like OP or anything like this. The damage is there. About immunities, I already talked about it, and I already mentioned it, and yeah, like short range and the fact that it has a mind of its own kind of makes it like a hard thing to get used to initially. So that's that. Can't say anything about Twister other than the fact that it's a synergistical spell, but no, Tornado Druid doesn't use Twister, they use strictly Tornado because the damage scaling is greater on this spell. Even if you max out Twister, you won't going to be using it. Let's talk about Hurricane, another reason why you want to be close, you want to stay close to your enemies. Because Hurricane creates the storm, just like the description says, around you, and it does cold damage, it slows them down, and the reason why like you want to stay close to them is because the area that it covers is not so great. It's like slightly, let me actually show it to you. It's a slightly bigger circle around your character, so it looks something like this. See? Yeah, maybe for somebody it's like huge circle, I don't know, to me it's not that huge. To me a huge circle would be something like this, that covers like 60% of the screen. So, and don't worry, even when the enemies are staying like in a point blank range, they will still take damage from your Hurricane. Now, since it does cold damage, and since I'm at Hell difficulty, I won't benefit from the damage part of the spell that much when it comes to Hurricane, because there's a lot of cold immunities out there. Yes, the slow will be there, but not the damage. So I guess I can say like one thing that is good about the spell, like that was good on Nightmare difficulty, it allowed me to deal extra damage. That's alright, but it also allowed me to interrupt or intercept any kind of charge attacks from monsters or just regular attacks. You know, some monsters have like extra fast, and those skeletons in X5, you know, the ones that are charging at you, can deal a lot of damage, but the moment they stay in this, the moment they touch this Hurricane, they already, like, it prevents them from any kind of continuation of their attacks at the beginning at least. So it's good, it's a good thing. Same thing with your, same thing would be on hell difficulty. So don't count too much on the cold damage counterpart. You should count it only as like a stuff that will disrupt enemies advancing towards you that freely. So that's that. Nothing in shape-shifting, you won't put any points towards it, simply because this tree, this skill tree, is dedicated strictly towards werewolf or werebear form. When it comes to summoning, what can I say about Oak Sage? This spell. It's a great thing. I mean, it distracts. Initially, I thought that it won't distract, it won't aggro enemies towards you from your character. Actually, it does exactly the opposite. It distracts them. It also boosts your life by a flat percent, by a flat number, and also by a percent number. So at the end of your leveling, you could spec either into Oak Sage, like you could put spare points either into Oak Sage or into the Summon Grizzly, which I will talk about a little bit later. When it comes to benefiting you, yes, it's a good spell as a whole, since it boosts not only your HP but your party members' HP and your pets. So I can't say anything bad about it. I mean, it does its job. It's great support that flies around you. Yeah, enemies can focus him down and nuke them down, but it's an extra target, you know, that protects your vulnerable, quote-unquote, body from getting killed. So that's that. It's a good spell, and it will be better later down the line, because I am planning to spec into this rather than like Summon Grizzly at the end, at least when I'm going to be finishing, when I will finish Hell difficulty. Now let's talk about Summon Grizzly. Summon Grizzly, I think that he has way more life than Clay Golem, to be honest. At least, like, if you compare them, like, together, Grizzly versus Clay Golem. And it does a little bit more damage. Now, the caveat is that it does not have any kind of debuff that Clay Golem has, for instance, which slows down the enemies, but I guess that's not that big of a deal by itself, since the main purpose of this companion is, again, like, one extra target to shift the focus of your enemies from your character to those pets that you can summon at, like, instantly, pretty much, as long as you have mana. So yeah, like, putting 1 point here, I think it's more than enough, to be honest. Even though some people suggest maxing it out later, I don't see really that. I don't see, like, you should look at him from this way, like, if you will max out Oak Sage, the life benefit that Oak Sage provides will going to benefit not only your character but also your bear. So why would you want to put points towards Summon Grizzly? Because his damage will be greater, but he's not the one that will be doing damage. You will be the one that will be doing damage. Maybe for a summoner build, but again, like, nobody's going to nobody's taking seriously summoner build for a druid, and for a logical reason, because it's not that great of a build to begin with. Even if you put like 100 points, maybe like break the game and make them do like million damage, yeah, but by itself, like, in the game, it's not that great of a build. So I don't see why would I want to put more points towards Summon Grizzly. When it comes to Nightmare difficulty, it helped me in Act 4 and Act 5. Once again, just for the sake of not aggroing as much enemies towards my character, and instead focusing their attention towards my companions. That's pretty much it. So what will I, as a conclusion, like, in short, what will I say about, like, Elemental Druid? If we're talking about, like, Act 4 and Act 5 on Nightmare difficulty, is it a good build? For Nightmare difficulty, yes, I'd say yes. It's just, you have to keep in mind the fact that it's a close range caster, and the fact that your main offensive spell has a, I wouldn't say clunky, I mean, just the same with Hammerdins, you know, some people cannot stand gameplay with Hammerdins because hammers are constantly getting stuck in the walls, they don't fly around obstacles and so on and so forth, and you have to center your character in a way that hammers are always like flying from the direction of your shield, like from the left side, and then go on the spiral. Same thing with this character, like if you will get used to the fact that those tornadoes are not allowing you to AoE like the entire screen, as well as that they have sometimes the mind of their own, they would like to travel like in a random direction. If you are gonna get used to that, yeah, you'll be more than fine, you'll have a great time with this class. Because the damage is there again, like the fact that this skill has like 3 synergistical spells. I already like maxed out one, I'm going to max out the other one, and then I will focus on Twister. It will allow this class to deal more damage than, say, Bone Necro, but and be even more tankier in some situations. It's just you have to get used to the playstyle. It's not bad, it's just specific, you know, to your likings. Whether you will like it or not depends on your taste. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Will I say that he's better or worse in comparison to Frozen Orb Sork on Nightmare difficulty or Bone Necro on Nightmare difficulty? Nah, I say he's pretty much on par with all of them. Some of them has like slightly higher damage, some of them have slightly bigger AoE but less damage, but in terms of general, what's the best word to describe it? Not universality. If you're looking for like universal approach when it comes to like tankiness and damage at the same time, as well as having companions, then yeah, like Druid is your like go-to option. My only downside with this is Cyclone armor. Like literally, like that's my not downside but nitpicking at this point. They could have made it a little bit more visually appealing or distinguishable, because if you look at the older graphics, see, it looks way more distinguishable. Yeah, there's stones like that have like 2 pixels around them, but come on, like if you compare it to this, especially when there's like special effects that's going on the screen, like enemies casting spells, you start casting spells, you know, something like this, and there's like apocalypse going on, it kind of from my point of view, Cyclone armor, I mean Hurricane, could have been a little bit more noticeable in comparison to other spells. And probably same thing with Hurricanes, because look like, yeah, it looks more realistic when it comes to this engine, but again, if you switch to the older graphics, see, Hurricanes are leaving this trail on the ground, so you can notice them more easily. Whereas if I switch here, yeah, they're leaving the trail, but it's like, it's hard to notice it. Maybe it depends on the area where you're fighting, but I think it should be a little bit more, it should be a little easier to distinguish for in some cases. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be it when it comes to Druid overview, so to speak, for Nightmare difficulty. If you have watched this video on YouTube, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. What do you think about the Druid as a whole, on normal, on Nightmare? What do you think about... there's a fight that's been going on. Okay, what do you think about him in general? About my opinion of this class, and so on and so forth. And with that said, I will see you all in the next video.